Feather is the most dynamic and arguably the best Boros commander we've seen in a long time. Her power is rivaled by few, and she demands a completely unique deck building experience. In this video, I'm going to show you a pseudo budget list that manages to include powerful cards, fun interactions, and a play style that you've probably never tried before. I'll be using TCG player pricing throughout the video to show you just how cheap it is, and you can click the first link in the description to see the list in full or purchase any of the cards in it for the cheapest prices possible. I do hope you enjoy this absolute monster of a commander deck, and if you do, remember to hit that like button, helps out a lot. Feather the Redeemed is 1 red and 2 white for a 3/4 legendary creature angel with flying. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets a creature you control, exile that card instead of putting it into your graveyard as it resolves. If you do, return it to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. That trigger is pure card advantage. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery that targets a creature you control, you get that card again at the beginning of the next end step, which means you can use this trigger on your opponent's turns, getting your spells back again and again. Barring resources, you can keep casting spells on your creatures forever. They always come back to you, and that's the point of the entire deck. Say hello to Boros Combat Trick Storm, a deck unlike any other. We're going to start with spells that target a creature we control that we want to cast over and over again since we get them back for free. We also want to keep the cost down so we can keep using them on our opponent's turns. In the 1 mana slot, we have a ton to work with. Defiant Strike pumps and draws a card for 1 mana, then we get it back to do all over again. Crimson Wisps, same thing except the creature we target also gets haste, which is nice. Expedite, pretty much the same thing. Niveus Wisps forces a tap on a creature, but we don't care about that at all because we're cantripping like a boss. Renegade Tactics on our own creature at sorcery speed doesn't matter, so this is just another repeatable 1 mana draw card on our turn. Bandage prevents the damage and draws. Then Heal and Panic are relics of the past, casting at instant speed and drawing a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. 8 spells that cost 1 mana that draw a card, 7 of which we get to cast every single turn, not just our own. Boros with this much card draw is unheard of, and these are just the 1 mana cantrips. At 2 mana, we're looking at Accelerate, which is just a worse Expedite, but it's still a cheap cantrip you get to cast forever. Guided Strike gives first strike, so it's just a buff Defiant Strike. Psychotic Fury is very cool. You're only going to be casting these spells with Feather on the battlefield, so Psychotic Fury should always have a target. Plus, Double Strike is sweet for commander damage. Shelter helps to protect Feather from the flurry of removal, and then Stun, well, you get it. Now I understand how this may look with all these tiny cantrips. Are we just spinning our wheels? Heck no. Remember, you get each of these spells back. You keep drawing cards, which draw you more of them, so on and so forth. Eventually, your hand is going to be bursting with these spells, and that leads me to our first win condition, Storm. We're running Empty the Warrens and Graveshot. Empty the Warrens is a monster in this deck and super funny. In the mid game, it's easy to get at least 6 or 7 spells going in a single turn. Feather keeps returning everything to your hand. Literally, mana is your only limit. For 4 mana, Empty the Warrens is usually going to land you at least 12 or 14 goblins, at least in my experience so far. In a game where players start at 40 life, Graveshot probably won't kill anyone that easily, but it can turn the tide of a game in your favor. 2 mana for sometimes 8 or 10 or 12 damage seems pretty good to me, and you get to spread that out fireball style, delicious. But my favorite Storm payoff in this deck, Aetherflux Reservoir. What a beautiful card. If the Reservoir sticks around for even a turn or two, you'll be able to nuke another player without any issue. The deck runs so many cantrips and self-targeting spells that recur, you will literally never run out of spells to cast, and they're all so cheap. The average converted mana cost of a spell in this deck is under 2.5. That's pretty low for commander. You gain massive amounts of life, then kill everyone. The Reservoir has to die or you win the game. It's really that simple. Boros Storm. So good. Everything we're doing rides on Feather being alive. She has to survive to cycle all of her awesome spells, so we need to protect her. Ajani's Presence is cheap, gives indestructible, and recurs. Emerge Unscathed gives color protection and recurs from Feather's ability. Also with Rebound, you choose which replacement effect happens, so you can decide whether or not to recur it immediately or get a rebound trigger. God's Willing grants color protection and lets you scry, nice repeatable card filtering there. And Valorous Stance is repeatable indestructibility you can use as a removal spell if you're in a pinch. Lots of shields for Feather. Because this deck is unlike any other, we get to run some real cheeky removal spells, ones that aren't as good anywhere else. Chandra's Ignition targets a creature you control, which means it's a potential board wipe over and over again. At worst, 3 damage every turn doesn't seem so bad. Jaya's Immolating Inferno is beyond funny. With Feather, you can target her and 2 other targets, burn them to the ground if you have to, and get it back. Impact Resonance isn't widely known, but you can divide the damage however you choose, so you deal 1 to Feather, the rest to whatever you want dead, then get it back. Then use it again at instant speed whenever you want. Reckless Rage is a repeatable removal spell and Feather survives it. Then Orum's Thunder is an artifact and enchantment destruction spell that you can get back by burning Feather with a kicker. More ways to abuse Feather's trigger. Spawning Breath is straight up ramp. Intimidation Bolt doesn't kill Feather, which means it's a recurring fog in Boros, not bad. Seize the Day is beyond amazing, giving you an additional combat phase every single one of your turns if you want it, no big deal, so broken. Spark of Creativity is card draw, just another nice cantrip. And Boros Charm is repeatable double strike and eventually a way to protect your team from a board wipe. Then to round out this package of absurdity, double cast, because who doesn't love 2 spells instead of 1? Pretty great with Storm, just saying. The deck is full of powerful creatures that take full advantage of our combat trick spell-slinging nature. Electrostatic Field is a win condition, hilariously. So is Gutter Snipe, but he wins twice as fast. It's so good. Young Pyromancer amasses elemental tokens, and then, oh baby, and then we have the trio of Mirrorwing Dragon, Precursor Golem, and Zadahedron Grinder. Because we weren't drawing enough cards already, think about all of our awesome and cheap cantrips on one of these nasty creatures. We give creatures First Strike, Double Strike, and power buffs across our army. That's going to be a huge deal. So much power in this deck. I can't wait for you all to try it. We love casting spells that target a creature we control, so the rest of the creatures in this deck care about that a lot. Akroan Crusader and Vanguard of Brahmaz are going to create more 1/1s for us. Fabled Hero becomes a win condition very quickly if it isn't removed. Favorite Hoplite is a more defensive heroic creature looking to keep him alive through a bunch of combat damage and damage-based removal. Labyrinth Champion requires you to target it, but if you do, deal 2 damage to whatever you want over and over again forever seems decent. Tethmas High Priest is especially saucy, recurring most of the creatures we've spoken about so far in this video. Best part is that you can cast it hits the battlefield, your opponents try to remove it, so in response you cast a flurry of 1-mana cantrips bringing everything back, and then the damage has already been done. So strong. And then my personal favorite heroic card in the deck, Akroan Conscriptor. On the face of it, already pretty insane. Since you can cast so many spells, you can probably take most of the battlefield, or at least all the powerful creatures, but then after you do that, while you still have control of them, cast Cloud Shift. You exile one of those creatures, it comes back under your control as a new creature, so it doesn't go back to its owner, and because you targeted a creature you control, you get Cloud Shift back. I honestly love this deck more than words can describe. Running Cloud Shift opens the door for us a bit to include some creatures we want to flicker. Boreas Charger, Knight of the White Orchid, and Core Cartographer are all perfect for this deck, getting us lands that we desperately need. In addition to land fetchers, Revel Arc is a great target for flicker spells, returning a pair of our creatures back to the battlefield. Certainly worth flickering. Then Sun Titan, same deal, except it has more flexibility, bringing back more creatures and other permanents that may get destroyed along the way. Flickering provides a lot of value and protection for our creatures, which is why it makes such a good sub-theme in this deck. We decided to bolster our defenses in this way by including Angel of Condemnation, Flicker Wisp, and Restoration Angel for creature-based blink effects. Then the deck includes Acrobatic Maneuvers for blink and card draw that we get back. Eerie Interlude exiles a bunch of stuff to protect from board wipes, then you get it all back. And Otherworldly Journey, flickering and buffing a creature works pretty well with Feather herself if you need it. Then we have Twin Flame, love this card. For the creatures with enter the battlefield triggers, Twin Flame creates copies of them and triggers Feather, so you keep getting it back. It's so much value. We've covered so many instants and sorceries, but this deck wouldn't be complete without their lord and savior Sunforger. While this card has spiked in price, we've managed to keep the total cost of the deck pretty dang low that it makes it worth it to invest in a copy. Sunforger is too good to ignore, functioning as a bomb spell tutor, getting you whatever you need at a moment's notice. When you don't need to unattach it, it makes a creature huge. It synergizes with Chandra's Ignition, and we're also running Magnetic Theft, so you can reattach it immediately and get this back thanks to Feather. Imagine being able to unattach the Sunforger, get a card you need, attach it again immediately, then unattach, get a card you need again, then get that enabler back to do it all over again. You cannot tell me that this doesn't sound absurdly fun. I mean, come on, it's so good. Swiftfoot Boots is going to help Feather stay alive. Don't play Lightning Greaves because Shroud is terrible in this deck. You need to be able to target your creatures. Elixir of Immortality stops you from decking yourself, which is a legitimate concern in this strategy, believe it or not, so run that card, trust me. Then we have Commander's Sphere, Boros Locket, and Boros Signet for some rampant fixing. The deck has an incredibly low curve, so we don't need too many bells and whistles here. We're running 35 lands in total. Slayer's Stronghold buffs one of our creatures. Needle Spires can be a creature if we really need something to target. Temple of the False God is solid colorless mana to help us cast a bunch of spells at once. Then we have dual lands in Boros Garrison, Boros Guildgate, and Windscarred Crag. Fetches in Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse, and then 13 mountains and 14 plains to round out the 99. While this deck is a symphony of awesome, I understand wanting to up the budget. I have a sick list of upgrades for you. If you enjoy the Storm component of this deck, Primal Amulet is a real house, getting completely out of control once it flips. For further abuse of Feather's trigger, Aurelia's Fury is very powerful. Same with Balduvian Rage and Fell the Mighty. Champion's Helm is a great upgrade to help keep Feather safe. Stoneforge Mystic can go grab Sunforger or Skull Clamp if you want to upgrade into that as well. Very strong with the number of 1/1s in this deck. Then some quality of life upgrades in Solemn Simulacrum, Burnished Heart, and Soul Ring. Then the truly over-the-top nonsense Teferi's Protection and Sword of Feast and Famine. The sword letting you untap your land's gross. That plays right into your Storm craziness. Feather the Redeemed is easily one of the coolest and most unique commanders we've ever had, essentially making unplayable cards absolutely bonkers. I love this deck. It's the first Boros deck I've ever really enjoyed in Commander. I can't get enough of it, and I know you will feel the same. Click the first link in the description to see the full list and purchase the deck on the cheap. It's around $60 right now, made from scratch. I promise you that's a bargain for how much fun you're going to have with it. If you're playing cards I'm not, leave them below and we'll chat about it. And of course, as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.